Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:02 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is that new?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh. We don't need that until 28. The closed caption is there was some new rules adopted related to ADA standards.
Yes,
And we don't have to have them fully implemented, but we went ahead and implemented some of them.
okay,
Just because they were easy to do. So.
that's fine. I'm used to the meetings with closed captions. I just haven't been in one here, so. All right, let's see, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thought online? Okay. All right. It looks like the agenda is approved. Moving on to presentations, proclamations, and visitors. Is there anyone in the audience or in Zoom that has signed up to speak?
No, he does not.
Oh, there are more people now.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak?
No? Okay.
Okay, we don't have anybody signaling that they would like to.
All right. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Move to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented by staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Consent agenda is, what was wrong?
So I would just call out in the minutes under the consent agenda, there
Yeah.
was just a slight change in your packet, but you guys have those, so.
Yeah, Doug said as presented by staff.
Okay.
So is that enough to, or do you want it with the amendments?
Just as presented by staff, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, there is no public hearing. There is no old business, so we can go ahead and move on to new business. Item 6A. I'm gonna biosolids removal intent to award. We will now have Matt Etzel present.
All righty, thank you. Matt Etzel, Assistant Public Works Director. For council tonight is the intent to award for the biosolids removal. As council is aware, this is part of a larger wastewater treatment plant improvements project. First step is to remove the biosolids in the existing lagoons. This was put out for advertisement. We did receive 3 pre-qualification statements, one from Synagro, one from American Processing Group, and one from Merrill Brothers. We received 1 bid from Synagro. We think this is probably due to, well, we know one of the bidders had mentioned that there was an abundance of work that was bid similar to ours. They received notice that they got a job in California at the same time as ours. So they didn't submit a bid. And then 2 of the firms, Synagro and American Processing, came out to the lagoons, took samples, but we only got 1 bid, and that was from Synagro. So their pre-qualifications appear to meet the requirements. The price that they've proposed seems fair. That's about $1,500 per dry ton, which our city engineer did a project a couple years ago, and it was about $1,200 per dry ton. So figuring
With inflation.
increase in fuel cost and increase in disposal costs, it seems like a really fair amount. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. If the council approves this action, we'll bring back contracts for your guys' review. That will have Cinegro's information, their bonding information, and at the same time, we'll make sure we get funding agency approvals. And yeah.
And I'd just make a comment that the engineer's estimates were about 30% higher than what the bids actually came in. So that's always a good sign when you get a bid in under the engineer's estimates.
Yeah, it also had, I mean, the competitiveness was, there was a lot of jobs that bid at the same time, but this contractor also got another job in the area. So I think we benefited from that through our city. Because the mobilization cost could be reduced since we're so close to that other city that's doing a project as well. So there's pluses and minuses, but.
They're gonna do it this summer?
Yep. They'll have till, I think it's October 31st to complete the work. We're hoping that they do it a little bit sooner so that, hopefully we'll have bids back and we'll be able to award for construction of the treatment plant before that date. So we're hoping that they come in, do their work, and they're gone by the time we start construction, so.
And so far, our wastewater project has been coming in under our budgeted estimates, which is great because what a lot of cities have experienced is actually projects coming in sometimes 40–50% higher. And so far, we're probably coming in quite a bit, maybe 20% lower with all of our bids. The difficulty is the last $6 million grant that we got from USDA is the last money spent. So even though we're trying to be frugal and because that's just being a good steward of public funds, it at the end of the day may not necessarily benefit ratepayers because we just won't use as much of the $6 million grant as expected. The benefit, however, is when we get to the construction phase, we don't know what that's going to look like. And that's kind of the big question mark out there.
Right.
And so we've got some cushion if that does happen to come in higher on the overall project because we've done fairly well getting lower costs for each stage up to this point.
We also, as you guys know, we have the collection system improvements as well after the treatment plant bid. So there's some flexibility there too, if we can maybe do a little bit more to utilize those funds. And I think we'll try to do our best to make sure that we can use all those funds and get all of our projects done and hopefully still be in or right under budget. There also, just a note too, when we bring the contracts to council, there'll also be a proposal from West Tech for construction services. They'll have to monitor loads and quantify pay requests and that sort of thing. And so there'll be, like any other project, we'll have a construction services proposal with this. We've received it, it's about $70,000, but just so you know, this number plus 70 coming forward.
That makes sense. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the intent to award Cinegro the biosolids removal in the amount of $1,360,465 in accordance with 279C.375 and OAR 137-049-039 as recommended by West Tech and presented by staff.
Second.
Is there any questions or deliberation for Matt? Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Matt.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item 6B, resolution 01-26, establishing water and sewer rates. We will now invite Ron to provide information.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So as you know, every year before we renew the budget, we have to set water and sewer rates. council has said in the past that they had a policy where they wanted at least a 30-day notice to go out to ratepayers before an increase takes into effect. So we needed to come before you tonight to get that action done so we could send out the appropriate notice with the next billing cycle. And what we're, as you know, last year we did a large increase related to the big wastewater project. And wastewater, as you heard, is going along the way it's supposed to. It's going well. Traditionally, we set those rates at 3% a year. That's kind of our target rate that keeps up with the normal rates of inflation. However, because of the significant increases in things like power, cable, telephones, everything seems to have really increased over the last 4 or 5 years. So each year, council has asked staff to look for ways to trim that number down. A number of years, our model was telling us we needed, like an 11% increase. We ended up doing 3 to 5% increases. So we've been under increasing based on the rate of inflation and the modeling over the last few years. And we're continuing that trend. We're not asking if we take the model and we try to get that model to get us where our policy threshold is, it's probably an 11 to 15% increase, but we're not suggesting that tonight. We want to keep it as close to 3% as possible. There's going to be some ins and outs in the budget forecast over the last few years. So we're not worrying necessarily about dipping down into our policy level in year 4 and year 5. So having said that, we'll go ahead and bring the model up and I'll show you just what we're talking about there. And Josh, you're up and running there?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to come up to the screen and I'll talk in one of the council microphones here because I can't see myself. All right, so these are our proposed numbers, but let's go to the right. This is our projected model. So this is our proposed budget year. And so the things that we're looking at is if you see the top bar is beginning cash, the next bar down is total revenues coming in, total expenditures is the next bar, and then your net revenue over expenditures. And what you can see is we're spending more in the water funds than we're taking in. And then, of course, that bottom is your ending cash. And when it's green, that meets our 90-day emergency operation threshold policy that we have, which is to have a reserve of 90 days operating cost. When it's pink, I guess is the color I'm going to say it is, that means we've dipped down below the 90 days. And when it's red, that means the fund is at a deficit. That means it's went in minus. Now, when it's red under Oregon state law, we can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. So what happens is if we don't do small incremental increases early on, we get to one of those spots like the 27, 28 or the 28, 29. And instead of suggesting an extra 2% on top of the 3, we might be at 20% on top of the 3. We try to avoid those. We're trying to do small incremental increases versus the large increase. And so this is with a 5% rate increase this year. Now, why don't worry about it as much? I want to make sure we're meeting council's policy statements of 90 days emergency cash. I'm not as concerned about it because under Oregon budget law, we have to budget for everything that could occur throughout the year now. And so there's a few line items in the budget. We're not going to go down through the individual line items in the budget, but there are line items in the budget for things like emergency repairs. Well, this year we had kind of a worst case scenario year, and we've spent all the money in emergency repairs. A lot of our infrastructure, when we think of repairs, it's things like pumps, gauges, meters, those types of things. water line breaks. It's not capital improvement projects. It's not putting in a new well or things like that. Those are different. This year, we had a bad year. We actually ended up spending most of it, and we still do have a lot of aging infrastructure. So we could see a couple of years where we end up using and absorbing most of that $85,000 that's in that emergency repair line. However, under normal circumstances, we don't typically spend that every year. So some of that money gets returned, and then it goes back in to give you a little higher beginning or ending cash balance. So we think 5% is fine. If we wanted to balance this off, we'd probably again be in 15-20%, but we're not proposing that tonight.
So
We're a little concerned about leaving it at 3%.
the numbers that we're looking at is the 5%.
It is the 5%.
Can we see? So
You want to see what 3?
I want to see what 3 looks like, and then I want to see what 4 looks like.
Here's the wonderful thing about our unique forecast model that nobody else in the state seems to be able to have is we can do this live. Okay, Josh. So there you go. So we were at, if you look at year 4, 29, 30, that was at 6,000. It's at 95,000. So that would be 3. And
It says 2, that's confusing.
where?
It just-
No, those don't
Okay.
look at those. Those are just year over year.
Okay.
So
This
what are
is-
we looking at then?
So this is what it looks like.
You're looking at the ending cash in your fund. That's what we want you to pay attention
Right
to.
there. Okay, this is what it would look like under 3%.
That's what it would look like under 3. So go ahead and take it back to 5, Josh, so that they can see. Okay, so next year you would have been the 26-27. That's the year we're in now. You would have been under your 90-day at the 3. That's why we're suggesting 5. You're at 6,000 on 29-30. That was 95,000. So Josh, let's put in 15%. This is the wonderful thing about our model is we can run these scenarios. So that's really what the fund should look like right there, where you're consistently staying somewhat even. You see that green line that has your ending cash balance. Now, we're not, if we weren't dealing with all of these inflationary increases, if we weren't dealing with the big wastewater project and the effects of that on our ratepayers, this is where we would be suggesting, but we think we can get by just by looking for ways to underspend certain line items throughout the next couple of years. And then we can relook at it next year or the year after.
So our packet says an 8% increase would be optimal, not 15.
Well, just to give us a little room, if we put in 8, Josh and I ran these scenarios when we were putting together the budget. And what 8 does is it keeps you out of the red. So you're still not meeting your 90-day threshold, but you're not going into a negative. And
What is this right here?
that's 8%.
That's 8%.
And basically, you see how the last 2 years aren't red?
Yeah.
Those are plus balances. They're just not meeting your 90-day.
And then what did the 4% look like? We did 3. What is 4?
4?
Yeah, what is 4%?
Oh,
Yeah.
put it 4. It's a little scary there on the top end, but.
But we would be under this coming budget year for our 90-day.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're gonna be under at 4%. That's why we're saying 5. We're saying 5 because we're supposed to budget to your 90-day, and that's what it took. It took 5.
And then
8 would be better.
put it back at 5?
I just wanna say in most cities, this would take several meetings because you would have to go back and have finance run different scenarios and you bring those back, but we're able to do it with our forecast model. So 26-27, which is the year we're budgeting for, we meet our 90-day threshold. That's why we've settled on 5. 8 gives you a 2 years of your 90-day threshold. Next year, when we come back, we can look at it again, but depending on what actually gets expended out of the fund, we're probably gonna be okay. I will also point out to council that one of the things that we did after this year was we reduced the amount of transfer from the water fund into the Public Works Capital Fund, which, as council knows, the Public Works Capital Fund buys equipment that's needed. It's a separate than the utility, but you still need a backhoe to dig pipes or a Vector truck to, suck out the holes and the debris and different things like that. You still need all of that equipment. So we've been transferring into that fund because we were doing our big shop project. And we've got a backhoe that is gonna need to be replaced as they're fighting. So I've been looking for a used one, by the way. And so there's gonna be a lot of needs on that fund. So we've been putting a little bit more the last couple of years into that fund. After this year, we ratcheted that down significantly. So we were putting in 80,000 a year, the last 2 years, and we ratcheted that down to 30. So this forecast model actually shows quite a bit of reduction into those capital needs. Also, there's just the one transfer to the Water Capital Fund. The Water Capital Fund is what will fund or pay for a new well, new water rights, new meter system, all of those things that we've talked about that are kind of critical for our city. We're not putting any more into that. We're keeping that flat. And unfortunately, are here participating.
Ron, I cannot hear you.
Okay, sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe at the dais?
There, I'll just use Doug's here. Unfortunately, for those who are here listening and participating, the projects that we do, when we do like a well project, just to drill a well is $350,000. We have no guarantee we're going to hit water. We've actually done one of those and hit a very small amount of water. To develop that well, it might be a couple of $1 million, depending on where it's located in the city. And so, these are large capital needs that we need. But for now, we understand that there's this kind of issue with everything getting hyperinflated. Electricity rates are going through the roof. We're having to pay those as well, gas rates, and we're trying to find some sort of equal balance in what we're presenting, but also maintaining the needs of the community. And we think 5% is the number.
Can you explain what would happen if we can't maintain the 90-day? If we go into the red, you said that the state.
Well, you can't go into red. That would
Yes.
violate Oregon budget law. We get in trouble for that. So
Yeah.
we can't do that. What would happen is as we get closer to those dates, because what's happened is if you remember this model last year, the red was the last year.
Yeah.
So what happens is we're slowly getting the red's creeping towards us closer and
No,
closer.
You say we get in trouble for the general public. What does that mean?
Well, we would be in violation of state budget law and we'd get a finding and then we'd get fined. I mean, we can't pay our bills, so we can't go into the red. The 90-day reserve is our policy statement. It's the industry standard.
Mhm.
And what that is let's say, for instance, we have some sort of an event, Cascadia, call it what you will, wildfires or whatever. And there's no money coming into the state. COVID was a great example. A lot of stuff just kind of stopped, right? The 90-day reserve is what we operated on until the machine started to work again. And so that's what it's for. So we put ourselves in a bit of a position if something like that occurs and we're not maintaining that, can we continue to operate the way that we're operating, or do we have to do something in the midst of that?
So what does the 3, 4, and 5% look like when it comes to this average person's bill?
Speak in the mic, please. I can't hear you guys.
Yeah, you got to get the mic back.
Okay, so now that we're done with the presentation, I'm going to go back to
I
my,
got a question there. Can we see the 3% on the sewer?
it's on the sewer, yeah.
This is on the water.
Yeah,
Can we see the 3% on the sewer?
Yeah, the sewer looks much different because we did that big capital for the sewer debt. So if you look at the sewer, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. What's incorporated in here is under our contract terms for the loans, we had to maintain I want to say it's a $366,000 reserve payment line item, and then we incorporated our debt. So moving forward into year 27, 28, there's a debt payment included. So you can see what's not factored into the model for this is the increased O&M, because we have estimates of what that is, but there's no point in us sticking those into the model today,
Yeah, we won't see those until
28,
29, yeah, 2029. Okay.
So.
All right. And then,
So Doug, the best way to do it is if we go back to the water fund, just to answer your question.
Scott didn't hear the question.
Okay, so the question that Doug had is, how does that affect the water?
Chart right here, it tells you what the new bill would be
Yeah,
for.
Say it out loud.
It's in the exhibit to the
this
resolution. It tells you what the new bills would look like based on your regular.
this is the new rate. It's a little over $2.
And this is at 5%.
That's at 5%.
That's what my question was, what does it look like in 3? 5. What?
Well, we typically don't do those kinds of scenarios or rates. It's a lot of calculations for all those different things. We do it on the forecast model, but here's how you could look at it on the forecast model if we want to use that. Our gross revenues are about $1 million. So a 2% increase is $20,000 for the year.
What I'm looking at, what I'm interested in, what is.
Doug, I'm gonna ask again. Can you speak in the microphone so I can hear you?
So I'm sorry, Scott. So my question is, how much is it gonna cost our users at 2 or 3, 4, and 5%? So what is the increase actually gonna look like? If we go to 3, what are people's bills gonna look like? We go to
Hey,
4,
Josh,
what are they
can
gonna
you
look like?
do a calculation for
I think,
us?
are you asking for the total? Because we
did.
have sewer and
Yeah,
water. So,
yeah, what are the rates gonna be?
so we're looking at the total number as a customer, right? So I pay $100 and whatever dollars.
So the sewer is staying at the 3%. So what's in the exhibit would be what it is. The 95.
That's what it is at 5%.
No, that's 3% for
No.
sewer.
He's
Right
looking at
here
water.
is 3%.
What was that?
What Doug
I
is
adjusted
asking
it
is,
to
what's
show
it broken down? Like
3%
my
for the
water bill
water.
went up $7 because that's what they look at. It looks like one solid bill. He wants to know what the total is at $3, at $4. I mean, at 3, 4.
Josh is our guy. He comes up with these numbers. He's good at it. So he'll get you a number.
So here's 3% down here, and then the total bill.
On the
water
water
side,
side,
how much is
160
the
difference.
And 4%.
Josh, is that with the police fee?
No, those are separate.
That's separate.
Yeah. We don't increase the police fee. Yeah.
So my biggest concern is how do we explain to our constituents on why we're paying a $160 water bill? Where can we pull funds from? Because like I said in many sessions before, when are we going to make it unaffordable to live in Aumsville?
Well, I mean, we can't pull funds from another source. It's under state law. This is an enterprise operation and
So
it
we're
has
just
to
going to
be.
make it to the point where we can't afford to live in Aumsville, is what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is we have to follow state law, and state law requires that it is self-supporting. It's
Okay,
an
so
enterprise.
Aumsville is going to become bankrupt when you have no longer residents in our town of Aumsville.
Well, I understand that the bills go up, Scott. But you know, we do have a comparison sheet for the cities around the state. And we are not excessive. We're actually in the lower middle of all the utility costs in the state.
I understand that, Ron, but a lot of people that live in Aumsville are lower income families, and you're making it to where they cannot afford to live in Aumsville.
Well, I mean, I'm not making it. These are just, this is an operation utility and we're
You're allowing
following.
it.
Well, we're just following state law. I don't have control over it.
Okay, well, Aumsville will become bankrupt and nobody will be able to afford to live in Aumsville. I'm telling you that right now because I'm to the point where I don't want to live in Aumsville anymore and I actually make a decent amount of money.
So what is the current rate right now? The new rate at 5% is gonna be 53.87. What is it now for a single user?
Josh, do you have the current water rate?
The current rate is 51.30 for water.
So it's $2.50.
And why is it more if you're outside of the city?
Well, because,
They don't pay taxes and things. So
well,
you
they're,
charge more to provide a service if you're outside the city.
But I didn't think taxes went to pay water. I thought water paid for
The-
water.
yeah.
The
No, what I'm
system
saying is
development
it costs
charges.
more to provide it to them outside of the city.
So part of it is we don't want to encourage users outside the city. We have a finite amount of resource. And right now, council has a policy that we won't even service anybody outside the city. So this is an old scale, and I'm not sure that we even have a customer outside the city, but it's been the longstanding policy that we charge double for those folks outside the city because we don't want to encourage it. We only have enough resource for folks inside the city. And if there's an emergency of some kind and we have to connect those folks that, they're going to have to help pay for the system.
I have a
So
technical-
people outside the city don't pay impact fees. New people moving in, the new development pays impact fees to the
Maybe on
system.
wells, who's outside the city on city water?
Hmm?
Who's outside the city on city water?
I don't know that we have anybody, we might have a few outside the city on sewer. I don't know if we have anybody outside the city that's on water, but we have to develop a rate structure because there's certain rules and laws where we might end up connecting to somebody that's not inside the city. As an example, if somebody's sewer system fails and they're within 200 feet of a sewer line, they might be just outside the city. Under the current law, the county will not allow them to get a new sewer system. They'll have to connect to the improved system of the city. And so we have to have some sort of a rate structure in the event that that scenario occurs, but there's very few people that, if there is any, that would use city services, and we really don't want to encourage it. So that's why those are what they are.
You know how many people go over their base rate between June and August? I just hate to do this in June, right, when everybody's watering, washing their cars, pressure washing, and then maybe they stop doing some of those things.
That's why we give them the 30 days notice. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
do what, though?
How many of-
Stir up water? What do you do in the 30,
How many of our residents are, I mean, that's our base rate. Have we ever thought about lowering the base rate? I mean, the amount of, like, not,
Well, then you'd have to.
Well,
lower the
yeah,
amount of
council-
water, Too.
Council,
Yeah.
we went through, so the utility has to pay for the utility.
I remember we went through it, but
Yeah.
I think there's member on this council that.
Yeah,
hasn't.
the average person's utility bill actually went up by lowering the base rate, because when you lower the base rate, what you have to do is you have to charge for every gallon of water they use. So you can have a base rate that includes water, or you can have a base rate that doesn't include water. And we looked at that model, and it was quite an extensive project. If you remember, we actually entered every household in the city into a database.
Mhm.
And people could come in and they could look at their yearly water usage and they could see what the difference was. And the larger users paid more, for sure. And some of the lower users paid less, but everybody that was in the middle actually did end up paying more. Because you still have to capture that revenue. And that would be a much fairer system, but that's a big lift to make people change to an entirely different type of billing system. And it's certainly not something we're doing here tonight. And we could certainly look at it again, but we spent a year on that. Council looked at it and said, that's not going to be good. So
The base rate's 10,000 gallons right now.
7. Mhm.
What does it hurt the city if you gave people 10,000 for the 3 bad months if you're gonna raise them in June?
Well,
Keep-
it
keep
doesn't,
that place-
there isn't any giving. So if you increase the base rate 3,000 gallons, you have to increase the fee to allow for the 3,000 gallons. It's not free. So you have to put that into the rate, which would bring it higher. Yeah.
Rollover gallons? You don't use your 7? We let them roll over their gallons for the summer months and try and keep.
All of these ideas that you have are great ideas, but it doesn't change the amount of money that has to come into the system. And you can make a change to the billing. You can make a change to the billing tiers, but you still got to capture the same amount of revenue. So anything that you do, if you remember right, we had these extensive conversations about discount programs and different things like that. Somebody has to pay for all of that. So you can take it away from one ratepayer through a different rate structure, but you have to put it on another ratepayer. And that's one of the problems. And you certainly can look at all those things.
Right.
But it's going to take some time because the cause and effect of those they vary.
Yeah, I was just concerned why we do it in June, but I get it's because you gotta plan your budget. So that's why you do the increase in June.
Yeah. And again, this is your initiative. Those finances are your responsibility. I'm responsible to present them to you, which I have done tonight. We think the 5% was a fairly good compromise for this year.
If nobody in this room makes a motion, then what happens?
We'll bring it back to the next meeting, but you probably aren't you're either gonna be looking at a higher increase or you're not gonna give the 30-day notice, because if we miss the June 1 billing cycle, you're not gonna capture the additional revenue for June, which means the percentage to get the same amount of money would have to increase.
I think what he's asking is if we don't make a motion, then there's no rate increase.
Yeah, I don't see
And then-
Counselor Lee making a motion on this, and so I'm trying to feel the room out.
I mean, we could show the forecast model and see what it would look like without a rate increase. It's not gonna look good.
Well, we showed you what it looked like with 3%.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna be violating state budget law within a year.
Can we pull it up on the screen just so that it's visible to see in real time?
And
Do you
again,
wanna see-
No rate
And
increase.
if we don't change it.
Oh,
If you
okay.
don't
Josh,
change it, show what that looks like.
Let's do no.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Are you saying no increase for
Yeah, if
this
we
year?
were, if we were
Yes.
just to keep it as it is.
No increase this year, but keep the 3% next year?
No, I just want it on a recorded meeting to
Yeah.
see what it would look like if we don't do any increases.
Okay, Josh, take out the CPI increase for the forecast. So did you just take that out of this budget year, or did you take it out of?
So you're in the, yeah.
Yeah.
Already in the pink.
So
Dollars if I'm-
I want to ask the question. At one point in time, and I asked this question before, when are we gonna stop raising water prices? Is it when again, we're gonna be paying $300, $400, $500 a month for a water bill? Sorry, utility bill that includes the water and sewage.
Well, I mean, that kind of a bill is many, many years away. I
We're
mean, none of,
reaching that real
pardon me?
quick. We're reaching that really quick because when I first moved to Aumsville, I was paying $95 a month. Now I'm paying 130. When is it when we're going to start paying $400 or $500 a month for water? When is the city going to start budgeting it to where we are not paying that kind of money? Because obviously there's a budgeting issue, not what's going on right now.
So is there anything in the expenditures that can be reduced or cut?
If you reduce anything in the expenditures and something occurs, like we had a breakdown on Boone 2 this year, and we spent about $80,000, you won't have the money to do the repair. And under Oregon budget law, if you didn't budget for it, you can't spend it. So we end up budgeting for, there's not a lot in the expenditure category outside of those things that we've taken on debt for like the public works capital. We have to pay that debt. We have infrastructure requirements that only get more expensive. And this council has criticized previous councils for having this exact same conversation multiple times where you've let the infrastructure fail at a cost to the community because you didn't want to add a dollar or two to the utility bill.
We're
And
not
we're
talking
nearing
about a
that.
dollar or two. We're talking about multiple amount of money. Okay. We have been talking about this wastewater treatment facility for, I've been on council for 10 years. Why have we not started it? Why are we continuing to raise the prices of our utility bill and we're not actually doing anything about it? Answer
Well,
that question, Ron.
Well, we are doing it, Scott.
Yeah, you keep talking about it, but when are we actually going to do it?
The
Well-
parts are in construction right now and
We
will
just-
be shipped here in July.
We just made
Okay,
motions
why
to
were
move
they not
forward.
shipped 4 or 5 years ago when we were talking about this 10 years
Well,
ago?
because council wanted us to go out and try to get grants, and we spent
No,
4 or
you
5
wanted
years
to
getting
increase
grants.
our utility bill. That's what you wanted to do. And now we're paying $130 a month for a water bill. That's not to include the public safety fee. When is it going to stop?
Well, had we not spent the 4 years getting grants, that bill would be $300 or $400.
If we had started it 10 years ago, we wouldn't be requesting grants. We'd be paying for it.
Scott, there's 10 or $20 million worth of water projects that are critical pieces of infrastructure that are in your capital facilities plan that need to be replaced. How come you're not funding that right now?
I don't fund, I vote.
My point with the comment, Scott, wasn't to criticize. My point with the comment is it's difficult to go back and say, why didn't a council do something 10 years ago? When we're sitting here talking about doing the exact same thing, I am just bringing you forward recommendations based on your policies and your policy statements. You don't have to approve any of this, but there's consequences to not approving it. We're not talking about a 20 or 30% increase. We're talking about 5%. My cable bill went up 30 or 40% this
I
year.
think to answer Scott's question.
It's
is
been
when
5
are-
to
when are we gonna-
6% every year
When are we
since
going to
I
stop raising the
became.
bill? Right, Scott? That is
Yeah,
what you're asking. When are we
That's
going
what
to
I'm
stop raising
trying,
the bill?
yes, Mayor,
So
yes.
fiscally, there will always be an increase based on cost of living because of what it costs just to operate it, right? Because of what it costs when gas goes up and we have to pay for that. Electricity, all of those things are always going to impact. And then A few years ago, we did make a policy decision to at least, so that we're on top of it and that we don't run into a deficit, to raise it a minimum of 3% every year to be able to stay on top of that cost of operation. That is the bare minimum so that we can continue to run the city. So when we look at the budget, we will always be looking at, raising it a minimum of 3% to cover the cost of operation. So to answer the question, when will we stop raising the bill? Well, we will stop raising the bill when there is no inflation in the world. That is the answer. And that is a shitty fucking answer. I'm sorry. Yeah. So,
Did you spell it right?
Oh, my gosh. So just back to the model, folks, just keep in mind, you can pick a different scenario if you would like it, but we've given you what we think is a reasonable minimum raise. The issue is, well, 2 years from now or 3 years from now, if we don't have some sort of incremental inflation raise, we're going to be in a position where, based on state law, we're going to be looking at a large percentage one-time increase, which is what happened 7 or 8 or 10 years ago with the water, and why council said we don't want to be in that position again. And so we use the forecast model. You can see it in black and white. I could go through line by line. To me, that's a budget. That's what you do during your budget session. We've done that in advance. We have not changed any of the budget line items. We have a hold the line budget philosophy here at the city. And in this water fund, everything that we're proposing in this year's budget is exactly the same that you've approved every year for the last 3 or 4 years. So we're doing exactly the hold to the line budget. I don't believe there's any line items in the water budget this year that have increased.
So I think at this
influence.
point, what would probably be, according to Robert Rules of Order, is that if we make a motion, it opens it up for deliberation amongst council. And then council has seen different options. And during deliberation, you can propose new things or make adjustments once that motion is open among council. So I think that is probably our best move right now.
Well, one more quick question. So I asked what was in the expenditures. So you said emergency repairs, but there's staff costs and there are other things in there, right?
I was using that line item as an example, but there's a whole list of things that are in the budget. It's not a huge list of line items. It's probably 25 items. That was an example. Yes, there's wages, staff salaries and benefits. Those are fixed. We can't change those. And then there's,
But we could eliminate the staff. Not saying that's a good idea, but I mean, you could.
Well,
How much?
the difficulty is we're a small city and none of our staff are funded fully out of the water fund. So you would have to eliminate the majority of your staff to have a major impact on the water, because as an example, everybody in the city that works on the water utility, if it's a billing, public works, as an example, they're funded out of 4 or 5 funds. Staffing is usually funded out of 3 or 4 funds. So it's just a percentage of everybody's salaries and benefits. So could you eliminate people? You could, but then there would be people to do the work. And you're not eliminating somebody from one fund, you're eliminating a position that does work in all parks, streets, sewer.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm just asking the question of, the point of my question is there's really nothing else in there to reduce.
No, there's going to be some funds that we budget for because of, like I explained, the way Oregon budget law is set up. There's going to be some line items in there that we probably will not spend. They're not hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're $5,000 here, $2,000 there. You know, and there's multiple lines for things like maybe supplies that we might need. We may or may not spend those dollars. And typically we do turn some of those dollars back in and it becomes a little higher beginning fund balance. That's why I'm not suggesting a 10 or 15% increase, because some of those will come back in and that will benefit us next year. But for this year, if I'm following council's policy, financial adopted policies that you've given me, your direction is to do two things. One is forecast the budget forward so that we can make small incremental changes and not large changes that will have more of a negative impact on the community. This model does that. The other policy that you've provided is do not fall below the 90-day reserve in this budget cycle. To meet the 90-day reserve, as you saw in the model, you have to have 5%. You could do 3, that would violate that policy. It's your policy, and if that's what you want, you just have to make the motion and that directs me and then I'm off the hook. I can't budget to violate that policy.
That's why I was saying that we need to move on to deliberation amongst council.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so moving on to deliberate among council, we need a motion.
I move to approve resolution 01-26 establishing water and sewer rates for the city of Aumsville as presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, so we have a second. Now we can open up to deliberation amongst council.
Total with the wastewater, it's like $3, right? Water side and 50.
Yeah. And if you remember, we had an outside consultant come in and do the FCS was the name of the consultant. They came in and did a separate projection for sewer, and we're just following that projection that you adopted. Yeah.
No, none of us like this.
No.
I hate it. I have to pay this rate too. I don't have any more money. Everybody wants my money,
Yeah.
but you know what? If we don't do this year, we're gonna have to do 10 or 12% next year. It snowballs, and that's why we have to be here.
And another reason that we're partly here at 5% is because a couple of years ago, when inflation was 11, we chose to stay at 3. And we knew going forward that we may have to increase it a little more than that, and today's the day.
Yeah, last year was the same. I think we suggested an 8% increase last year. You chose 3. But as you see, that red is ratcheting up. We didn't have red last year. Now the forecast shows red. Now those models aren't 100%. I say this every time we display the model. The model shows a trend. So we're going to have some money that we're going to probably end up overspending a line item or two, and we'll have a bunch that'll return. And so we're modeling for basically we're I wouldn't say worst case scenario, but we're modeling to spend all of our money. We won't do that, but it shows a trend. And the as you see, that trend is now looking more negative and more negative. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of some of that negative in the actions that we take today. So if we just wait and we model year to year, then at some point we're going to be in that year and it's going to be a catastrophic increase. So
I think
that's why we use the model.
I want to hear from everyone. Who's left?
So I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm going to vote no. And then as long as this continues to be a vote no, and the state has to investigate, we'll see if there's any fraud or abuse in our city.
We have passed all our audits. We do get audited every year.
I'm still going to
We
vote
just
no.
we just
Yeah.
got our audit report in February. You guys all got a
Yeah,
copy of it.
we all got a copy of it. And then on top of that audit report, I have to submit a statement myself and fill out some paperwork. And that all passed. Katie,
It's when I got my packet, I also pulled out my past utility bills and I did the calculations for myself and it is less than $5 a month. But everybody else is raising rates too. But everything is getting more expensive and it's not Ron's budgeting, it's not anything. If we want to stay on top and stay legal with the state, 5% is, or $2.57 isn't too bad for a month. And I am low income or social security and a little retirement, but it is what it is. And I would vote for it.
Doug?
I don't know. I think I'm more 3 or 4 and try to keep getting by. I mean, you're saying we won't spend it. So we don't spend it. Why want to?
That's assuming we don't have any emergencies.
I get that.
It just means you don't meet your your 90-day reserve policy.
I think the 4 showed we're in the pink, not in the red.
That means you don't meet your 90-day.
The 90-day.
Yeah.
So we'd be breaking our own policy.
When we put these together, we're putting these together based on your established policies. We're not advocating for this. We're just showing you what the numbers are. We just have to tell you what the cause and effect of the decisions are.
And I was on council when we did that. I was a counselor when we came up with the minimum of 3 and 3. And that was so that we had a base. And the reason that we have the 90-day running thing is prior to Ron coming on, the city was in a really horrible position. Like we weren't going to run through the next maybe 6 months.
And nobody even knew that.
So there was a lot of work that went behind it. Yeah, nobody knew when our old administrator went out, like the city was in such a bad spot. I don't think we would have made 6 months with the funding that we had in the budget. So these are the reasons that these policies were made up by council, right? One, council never wanted to be in that position again of possibly having to go bankrupt or shut down city services within 6 months. And 2, to be able to keep up with inflation and what was standard was agreed upon by council, a minimum of 3%. Those were conversations that I remember having as a counselor. This is a different council. And we did go over a lot of analysis over the water. We talked about what happens if we pay just for our own uses, what happens if we hook up to Salem. We talked about what happens, Staten. We talked about keeping the discount for our seniors versus getting rid of it. We went into a lot of conversations over the course of years regarding the water. I just want to provide that for background. So if council wanted to make an amendment and not do the proposed, you do that during deliberation. So if someone wanted to make an amendment, it would happen now and it would need a second. If there is no second, it would die and it would go back to the original.
Well, I'm in favor of staying with the 3 minimum. You said 3 minimum. I know that's another policy, but the 3 minimum is another policy.
So you would have to formally make an amendment and there would have to be a second and then we would deliberate it.
Basically, what the process would be is you would make a motion for what you're in favor of, and then you would see if it had a second.
Yeah.
So I move to grant a 3%. increase rather than a 5%.
Second.
Okay, so you have a motion and a second on a second motion. It's not an amending motion. So
I think it would be an amending motion because the motion is to increase the water. So the proposed increase was 5% and it would be an amendment to 3%.
yeah, but the maker of the motion is the only one that can amend that motion. So you basically have a competing motion. So the last motion would get voted on first, as I understand it. You would call the question. If that fails, then the original motion would come up for vote.
Not how I've done it, but okay. No, that's fine.
Well,
We'll
you're
do-
the chair. You're the chair, Mayor. It's not my meeting, so you're welcome to
No, that's
address
fine.
it.
So what do we need to vote on first? Doug's. Okay. So is there deliberation over the 3% amongst you?
What's the difference? I mean, we're 2%, so it's 40 cents.
Can you bring back up what the forecast looks at 3%, Josh? So the policy is that we do not go into not being able to provide a 90-day reserve within this fiscal cycle that we're, right? So the one that we're operating. So the 3% would put us into violating our own policy. We would not be able to maintain that 90-day reserve and for the 26-27 forecasted year.
So the other thing that you should know about those numbers is the 26-27 budget that you see there, the one that we're proposing. We have already estimated the return unspent dollars into those numbers. So for the rest of this fiscal year, any money that we don't plan to spend or don't think we will spend are already reflected there.
How
So
much is that? How much is it so far?
I mean, I don't know, Josh, can you calculate what those numbers are based on the model, what we're not planning to spend? Yeah, it looks like you can do it right there. Josh, I'm glad I had you come tonight.
So the personal services are gonna pretty much remain level. We save about 50,000 in material and services from what we budgeted. And another close to 50,000 in capital expenditure.
So there's roughly $100,000 of money that's returning in this budget cycle. And again, some years that's a little bit more, some years it's a little bit less, but that's already calculated into that number. So there's not going to be, for this year, there's not going to be any of those return dollars. They're already in there.
For my part of deliberation on the 3%, I do want to provide a comment that I am really uncomfortable with not being able to maintain a 90-day reserve within our operating fiscal year. I think that would be irresponsible for us as a city.
I agree with that.
Aye.
I mean, I came in with the mindset of, no, I'm not voting for anything, kind of Scott's same attitude with it, but this is something I mean, when you put it out like that, what do? I'd almost be inclined to make a motion to raise it 8% and then we have some leverage against you next year. I mean, It's another dollar. I don't know, you know, I don't.
Well, we can,
If the
We have-
council
we
wanted
have
to
a-
be in the green all the time for all those years and we're just gonna keep ourselves in the pink and hope to not, you know.
the 5% would keep us within our policy that we established, which would be in the green in our operating year. The 3% does not.
Nobody wants to do any of it. I get it.
Right, but the 3% keeps us within our commitment to try to raise.
Yeah, the commitment was a
3%,
minimum.
A minimum.
A minimum of 3% when we made that policy.
I'd just like to do something in the future, maybe about summer months and people more inclined to take care of their properties and water, pressure wash their car, do the things they like to do with water that they're paying for. But if they're pushing themselves to going over, and then that's where this is really gonna compound on them, then they're not gonna water. They'll be
Wash
like
your-
me. They'll be like me and have brown grass and maybe paint it and it'll look like crap, you know? I don't water,
We do have the authority to put in AstroTurf.
which is a heck of a lot more than just watering. A lot. I got bids for
Options
AstroTurf. It was like
good, I think.
$9,000 to do my front yard in AstroTurf. Serious. I have estimates. I can
Yeah,
show you.
I'm just saying, there are options if they don't want to spend water.
But if I stay on here, I guess I'm gonna kind of propose over the next couple of years is maybe we give them some more water in the summer or roll over their gallons that they're not using. I don't know how much more it really costs the city if somebody goes over 1,000 gallons, what they're bringing in versus what it costs the city to pump that water to their house. Somebody has a leak and you give them a discount, you know, I mean, just, I'd like to look into that so that we can keep people that want to have gardens and want to have green grass, not get frustrated.
Well, one of the big problems we have is in our peak demand period.
Right,
we're-
that's where we
We're
run
pumping
low.
1,600 gallons a minute and our system can only pump 7.
You're gonna get us another well
Wow.
pretty soon.
Well, we're trying to do
Okay,
that,
So in our
but,
peak,
but trying to
there's-
provide incentive for
So maybe
people to
there'll be
use more
conversations
water
over the next
is,
few years. Let's see where we
Yeah.
go with
yeah,
water.
we
but
can't
that-
guarantee that there's gonna be a, we tried to dig a well and it was not a viable well.
we
And
got your
then
Sticks yet?
I'm about to get some gummies and go out there and witching sticks. Maybe, I don't know, pray to my dead dad. Like, I don't know.
I just don't want people to
Uh,
be scared to go over their base rate.
so,
because of all the-
So we have a motion on the table that we are discussing, and that motion is 3%. There has been a second. If there is no further deliberation, then we move to a vote. Is there more deliberation? Katie, I didn't hear anything from you on 3%.
so are you moving the question for a 3% increase forward?
That is the process, right? Because that is what is on the table. So if it doesn't pass, then we go back to the 5. If it does pass, then that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If nobody else has anything to add to deliberation, then I call a vote for the current motion on the table to raise those sewer and water 3% each. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. The motion fails. So now we are back to the original motion, which is 5%, which is the same process that we go through. Do we want to continue deliberation or do we want to go ahead and call to vote? Call question. Okay, so we have a call question. Ron, can you explain what a call question is for everybody?
When a member makes a motion to call the question, it doesn't require a second. And what it does is immediately ends the debate and moves the question forward for a vote.
I knew that, but I just wanted, okay. All right, there's been a call to question. So all those in favor of raising the sewer bill, I think the motion is to raise the sewer bill 5% and the water bill, or sorry, raise the water bill 5% and the sewer bill 3%. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. We have 1 nay, 2 nays.
You didn't ask for them yet, so I
Oh,
didn't say.
okay. All those opposed?
Aye.
And Scott?
Aye.
Scott was,
Sounds right.
yeah, I am a
Then
voting
I'll
member.
go with nay.
So we have, it still passes. Okay, so we have 3 opposed and 4 affirmative yes. the motion does pass.
Who was the other?
Only because I knew it would pass anyway. That way I don't have pitchforks coming to my house later.
You're a smart man.
Mr. 8%.
Yeah, well, the next.
It's on the record
Yeah,
that
we
you
can put
said
it
that
in.
you would go for 8%, just,
He just wants to paint everybody's grass.
but
I want people to have paint money.
1 minute you're 8%, the next you're no. I do want to put it on the record that everyone, we all pay this bill. And every city in the state of Oregon has a minimum cost of operation increased every year. So it is a crappy situation. Moving on to, where's my paper? Item number 7, city administrator report.
Well, I will keep it short because we've had a long debate tonight already, and I appreciate your thoughtful conversations. I understand, and listen, our staff carries this torch for you. We're always looking for ways to minimize these impacts, and I think we do a good job. A lot of other cities would be, not looking for grants and just offering up these increases as part of the cost of doing business. And I just want council to understand that my staff look at this every day. We look for ways to minimize impacts to the community. We look for ways to build the infrastructure that's required at a minimum impact. And we look for ways to, move the community forward through other mechanisms, through business operations or grants, and not through rates or, dedicated funds somewhere. So I just want you to know when we propose these, we're just proposing these based off of the realities of the numbers of the operation and the policies that we have that are good policies that you set for good reasons at the time, and that was so that we did not get to a point where, as the mayor recounted, we were minus in a lot of our funds, and we're in some very treacherous territory there. I won't go into that. So thank you for that. So every year I host a Budget 101 meeting here in the community center. That is May 5th, which I think is next Tuesday. Is that right? Yes. At 6 p.m. And it's not a budget meeting necessarily we don't do a formal hearing. A lot of times, most of the committee members don't show up. It's for the average resident that wants to come in and just ask a question in a very easygoing, community forum style. We talk about how the city budgets are structured, the different funds that we have. Some of them are restricted, some are dedicated enterprise funds. So we talk about how the utility operations work. And we go through those numbers in a little bit more detail, just for those folks that have those questions and want to dive into the numbers a little bit deeper prior to the budget meeting. And we do that so if somebody wants to come to a budget meeting, they've gotten that background to be able to provide some meaningful comments to the budget committee. So anybody that wants to attend that, you're welcome to come. I'll spend as much time with you here as I need to. Our official budget hearing is on Tuesday, May 12th at 7 p.m. And that's here in the community center. In your packet, I did want to bring this to your attention. We like to bring these big ticket wastewater projects up in advance. That we don't like to hit you with it at the last minute. As you know, we've had multiple conversations and meetings about the biosolid contract. Tonight, we did what we call a notice to award, but the contracts will come back to council in a couple of meetings for award. Once they're prepared, I don't know if it'll be the next meeting or the meeting after that. Another piece of the wastewater project that's coming forward is our SCADA system, which there's a quote that's in your packet. TAGS is our integrator of record, which as council, for those of you that have been down to our public works facilities and you've seen the automated screens that show you when pumps turn on, when pumps turn off, water levels in the different tanks and things like that. Well, we have to have a system for the new sewer treatment facility, and this is part of the proposed sewer capital improvement budget. And so right now, because they're an integrative record, we don't go out for formal bids. We basically we do value engineering and checking on their quote. And then as long as that meets industry standards, then that goes into a contract. So what we don't want to do is have one automated system that doesn't necessarily work, that's different than another automated system. And that's why we have what's called an integrative record. So it's all the same and consistent. So, and we did that through a formal process. So this will come before you with some contracts. And it may be the next council meeting or the meeting after, but within the next two, it's a $750,000 hardware purchase for the wastewater plant. And I don't know if that's on budget or a little under budget, Matt, do you know? Yeah.
Again, Matt Etzel, Assistant Public Works Director. So the quote that you have in front of you, it is on budget. The important part to think about when you look at that quote is it's not just the integration work itself. They're also going to provide a lot of the hardware, like the motor control center, the electrical equipment, computers, monitors, the programming to connect all those pieces. That's included in their work. Normally, if you didn't have an integrator of record, this work would go to the general contractor who would then sub to an electrical contractor. So you're going to pay a markup on the electrical contractor. You're going to pay a markup on the general contractor, which is fair because they have to manage those contracts. And ultimately the city pays those markups. So when we knew that we were going to have a water project, a wastewater project, like Ron said, we did a formal request for qualifications. We had all the integrators in the area propose their fee scale and that sort of thing. And that's what they based their rates on, their quote for their rate, and then plus the equipment as well. So
This is where you worked all into your number for the wastewater prior.
right. So if council chose not to include this, then our engineer would have to go back, work with their sub-consultant electrical engineer, include this work now into the bidding package for the general contractor, and then we would quote that work as part of the general contractor's scope of work.
But we wouldn't know what system we're getting, and
Right.
they may not talk with the current system that we have, which is fairly new. So
I don't know how familiar you guys are with writing code and that sort of thing, but there's lots of logic and it makes Josh's budget thing look really simple and that's really complicated. So if we were to have some sort of issue in the future, TAG has a backup of our system. They can actually come in remotely and fix problems for us remotely. If we put it in the general contractor's scope of work, we could get any person writing logic. And then when we did have an issue, we would have extra time for our integrator to come in and try to solve that problem. How do those pieces connect? How do they talk? Another important part is during startup. We'll have the integrator of record on site that's already prepared in their scope. If anyone's been a part of a construction startup, it is a nightmare. You have a pump manufacturer that's there and they're ready to start their pump and they have another job in Indiana. And if the contractor's not ready or the programmer's not ready for them to start their pump, they'll get back on a plane and they'll head to Indiana. And then we'll have to wait 2 weeks to start up one pump. So this is where this is really important because they'll be there on site during startup programming things, like they can do it in their factory, program a lot of the work before they even bring it on site. So
And they are a leader in the industry. They're probably the dominant entity
For
that
sure.
does this type of work, especially in our area. So
What's the bonding cost? You
The
have to do that for 2
the
years?
bonding cost, they included that because when we put this in front of our funding agencies for initial review, we wanted to make sure that we could even do this. Some of the funding agencies have different requirements, and so we wanted to make sure we did this. One of the funding agencies' requirements were that they have their own separate bond just for this project. That is their cost that they're just passing on 100% their cost. That's what it's costing them. They've provided some documentation. It's not included in your packet, but that's their cost to provide a bond for 2 years, which is our engineers requirement when we do a project. They basically warranty their work for 2 years, and that I think it's $15,000
Oh.
covers the $800,000 basically for 2 years. Anything were to go wrong, they would have to fix it, or we would file an action against their bond and have the bond pay to fix it.
that's just an FYI, but we wanted you to know contracts are going to come forward. We didn't want to surprise you with it.
Yeah.
There's also correspondence in your pack from the Girl Scouts, thanking us for allowing them to participate in Corn Festival, and it provided some much needed funds for them. And that's all I have. If you have anything or any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't have any questions. Does anyone? Moving on, mayor and councilor reports. Does anyone have anything to report?
I don't actually, but I want to apologize for not having anything to report. I wasn't able to go to the local public safety coordinating council, but I will try to connect to some of the others and see if there was an update or something and then pass it on at the next meeting if I can get something, but I wasn't able to go, so.
I was looking at my calendar for the budget meeting on the 12th. I have a mandatory work assignment that I cannot get out of, so I will not be able to attend the budget meeting, so I'll have to have on May 12th.
On May 12th.
Yeah. I gotta work. I can't get out of it. I did attend the spring conference. I was disappointed that Doug had to cancel at the last minute and not go. The classes that I took, we did a mayor workshop, and really focused on kind of like what we did tonight. How do we support each other as cities when we're all fighting for the same thing and we have opposing views? That was the focus of the mayor workshop. I attended a couple classes as well as, inspiring the next generation of leaders, which also incorporated hiring processes. That was really interesting. We had a group of young grad students come out and talk about why they don't want to get involved in public service. And so that was a really neat exchange. And attended an AI was like one of the main things, presenters, and it's very scary and cool what AI can do now. I don't know if I'm ready to use it all for Aumsville, but it's kind of cool what they can do. And I attended for another meeting with Oregon. I'm tired, guys. OMA, Oregon Mayors Association, again, which was reflected kind of what we talked about in our general class. So I had a busy week last week, and I just want to say that tonight we had really good deliberation. We are not always going to agree on things. And one of the things that I've really struggled with on this council is lack of comments and deliberation. So even though it was a really hard topic and we have some strong feelings, this is where we're supposed to talk about them. and vote. There are going to be moments when we do not agree on everything, and it is absolutely all right. And I want you guys to continue to have those deliberations and provide that feedback, because silence is assumed support. And I never want somebody to sit on this council and have questions later and come back and think, I stayed quiet. So I want to thank everybody for their participation tonight. It was a hard discussion. Moving on, if no one else has anything, is there anything for the good of the order? Oh, Scott.
I was just saying thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, Scott. I miss your face in person. I just want you to know. Moving on to good of the order. Does anyone have anything for good of the order? And then we went over correspondence. So if that is everything, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting at at 8:27 p.m.
Good night, council.
Night.
Thanks, Scott. Stay safe.